Hi, I'm Kim Henry. I'm the 405-167 Program Administrator, and I am here to talk about a potential change that may occur at the Northeast 44th Street interchange. Normally, we would like to do this meeting in person at a public open house, but due to everything that's going on right now, we're following King County directions, and so we are going to do this online. We do welcome your input, and we would like to hear back from you. So the contractor proposed this change because we have several different project goals that they are required to meet throughout the life of this project. And one of those goals is to minimize impacts. They have come up with a new strategy that really does minimize construction impacts, but also has some long-term benefits as well. And so we want to go through those and talk about each of those different areas. The area that's being impacted is the area right here at 44th, and it's the area that's highlighted on the map. And the area right at the Seahawks, the very north end of the project area, is where that transitions back into what had previously been designed. And then the same thing at the south end, right there at the May Creek area, is the area where it transitions back into the same exact design as previously. You can also see that it just really affects the area right around the interchange. So I think we've shown this video many different times, and you may have seen this video before. This shows the previous design or the original design with traffic in and around the roundabouts. And you can see as we are looking here, north is to the top of the page. There's a roundabout at the very north end here where the northbound on-ramp gets on. You can see that design and the traffic going through the interchange there. The new design is just slightly different. With this design, we have 405 going over 44th, and 44th is at ground level and goes underneath of 405. This represents much flatter grades for bikes, pedestrians, and ADA access. There's a big advantage to that, but it also provides better opportunities for planting vegetation in and around the interchange. That is not an easy thing to do, is to put vegetation on top of a bridge. And so by being down at ground level, we can get much more of the natural vegetation in. As we go underneath the bridge, you can see that in the bridge area, there are vertical abutments. There are also lots of rocks and gravel. And that makes for a very uneven surface and prevents people from spending a lot of time in and around those areas where they can't get comfortable. As you can see here, there's a lot of space between these two bridges, almost 100 feet or more than 100 feet, which provides for a lot of open light spaces. There's also will be a lot of illumination underneath the bridge, providing a lot of light as well. The BRT transit stations are here on the ramp themselves, and you can see instead of being up in the air where they are subject to more noise, they are down tucked in against the walls and actually shields them from a lot of the traffic noise, making this a much better pedestrian environment. So one of the things that we wanted to really look at were how is this new design going to affect a number of different things that were reviewed in the environmental documentation for the project, and one of those areas was noise. So we did do a complete new noise evaluation for the area with the new design. And what we have here are three different colors showing the different changes that occurred. The green actually shows where there was a decrease in noise from the previous study to now with the new design. The gray is area where there was no change. And then the yellow is an area where there was a slight increase, in the actual noise levels. At these locations where there was a slight increase, they were all below the criteria level for evaluating whether a noise wall could be included or not included. And so while there was a slight increase, it did not rise to that level where a noise wall would be considered and evaluated. Also, they were very slight increases. 1 decibel, our noise experts tell us, can't actually be heard, and these were less than 3, so very minimal change overall.
My name is Jim Laughlin. I'm the Technical Services Manager. I manage the Air Quality, Noise, and Energy section here at WSDOT. The original design had the 405 main line traveling under 44th, and the new design has the 405 main line traveling over 44th. So the main source of noise from highway traffic is generated from where the tires meet the pavement. So essentially where the rubber meets the road. But the tire pavement interface noise travels to the receiver and in a direct line, and then it dissipates over that distance between the source and the receiver by about 3 decibels for every doubling of the distance. So it decreases by that amount as you get further away. If you have an elevated source, if the highway noise source is on a bridge, for example, and you're down below, that bridge, the edge of that bridge actually shields the receiver from the tire pavement interface from some of the lanes of traffic. But wherever noise is shielded and the line of sight is broken, you'll get at least a 5 decibel noise reduction just from breaking the line of sight. And even some of the short concrete crash barriers that you see along the highway, those can actually have a small effect on the noise by blocking the sound at the tire pavement interface. But as far as our model goes, because it's a very conservative model, it doesn't really have an overall effect on the outcome of the model. But it can have a significant effect to receivers nearby. So we could expect some improvement with having those barriers as part of the project. I think one of the main things that I saw in the updated noise study was that the noise levels at these receivers are still below impact. Raising the elevation of the main line, the 405 main line, is not going to increase noise levels, and they're certainly not going to increase noise levels above the impact. And I think that's important.
Now I'd like to talk about one of the main benefits of this new design, and that has to do with the construction phasing and sequencing. And the reason this is so important is it really reduces the impacts during construction. Construction is a very difficult time, and particularly for this area, because we do have so much congestion through here. And so one of the keys is keeping traffic flowing, having the minimum amounts of impacts. This new strategy allows the contractor to do a significant amount of work offline that does not impact the traveling public, and it does not impact the flow in and around the interchange nearly as much as the original design. So take a look at how those changes will affect traffic overall. The first step is for the contractor to build the north roundabout that also provides the access to northbound 405. So this moves the on-ramp from the current location up north. And once that is done, then the existing loop ramp can be closed. Once the loop ramp is then closed, the contractor plans to start building the northbound mainline bridge, and they will keep Northeast 44th open to all traffic. So during that time period, the bridge will begin construction, and this will not be impacting any traffic. Then they can build the mainline roadway of the freeway on either side of that bridge and be able to do most all of the work ahead of time before there's ever a traffic switch or a need to impact any traffic. Then they will build the roundabout on 44th itself, still using the bridge over 44th, but you can see there's a little piece of roadway that actually gets built down under the new bridge. That won't be open to traffic yet. That will be closed off. It will just be get constructed and ready for the next phase. Contractor will also build northbound off-ramp to that roundabout. So that is the first step. That allows the contractor to be then set up to do one full weekend closure in order to really prepare for the next phase of this work. So a lot of work is going to happen over the course of this weekend closure, and part of that work is going to be putting in now a temporary connection for 44th. Once that connection goes into place, they no longer need to have traffic on the bridge over 405. That bypass is only temporary, and then they will be connecting that bypass up with new temporary southbound off-ramp and southbound on-ramp. Traffic will shift to that new alignment, and traffic will also shift onto the new alignment for 405. So both northbound and southbound will be going over on a temporary basis over the same bridge that was built just for northbound travel. Once that is complete, then the bridge that did carry Northeast 44th can be demolished offline without any impacts to then traffic in and around the 44th. Then most all of the construction can occur offline from that point forward, which is really where the big benefit comes in. So at this point, the contractor is going to be able to start work on the new southbound bridge and build that offline. Also build the new southbound off-ramp, and doing that also offline, not impacting traffic. Then they will construct the new roundabout for access in and out of the express toll lanes, as well as the one that will provide the access in the southbound direction and at 44th. Connecting in with a new southbound on-ramp, and then completing the rest of the roadway on either side of the bridge. The next step is to then restripe the northbound direction, put traffic onto the new alignment for the southbound direction, and most all of that work has now been completed without major impacts to traffic and major traffic switches back and forth. So much better overall in terms of the impacts. One of the other areas that we've heard questions about is, well, does this new design change maintenance responsibilities? So we have taken a look at what are the changes that would occur if we did change that design. And so that area is highlighted here in the area in the blue box. Nothing outside of that blue box will change in any way, only the area right in the blue box. So we took a look at all the different maintenance responsibilities that are part of an interchange, and then took a look at, well, if it was one design versus the other design, what would change? And under the original design, we have a column set up here where you can see who was responsible, and then the column next to it shows what happens if we put 44th down at ground level and how those responsibilities change. Two of the areas WashDOT took on responsibility for. One of the areas that city now takes responsibility for. So only 3 areas were impacted, and WashDOT took on responsibility for 2 versus 1 for the city.
Hi, I'm Carl Westby. I'm the traffic lead for the 405 program. From a traffic operations perspective, these things are going to function the same. Our original concept had a series of roundabouts. This new concept has a series of roundabouts. Same type of design. So operationally, for both vehicles and pedestrians, they will function the same. Safety performance for roundabouts is they provide some things that you don't get at a traditional signalized intersection. And the biggest piece is the number of conflict points. Conflict points at a modern roundabout are very simple. You first have a interaction with a pedestrian at the crossing. After that, you drive forward, a vehicle has an interaction with other vehicles in the roundabout. They only need to worry about the vehicles to their left, enter the roundabout, and decide where to exit. Compared to a traffic signal where the lefts, the throughs, the rights, the pedestrians are all happening all at the same spot, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So we see a lot of benefits for safety from roundabouts. As we look at the historical data and compare roundabouts to intersections, we see that roundabouts have lower overall number of crashes per vehicles entering, and the severity of crashes is a lot less. So if there is a crash or a collision, the severity and the likelihood of injury is a lot less with roundabouts. Yeah, operates the same. Instead of the direct access vehicles going up, they will just drop down. But once they reach the roundabout, they're going to traverse it just like they would before. We've received a number of questions about whether or not this interchange has enough capacity to handle the traffic volumes that are out there and the ones that are projected in the future. And the answer is yes. We looked at the Port Quendel plan development, the Panabode plan development, park and rides, as well as just background traffic growth, and found that, factored all of those into the design of this interchange and made sure that we've sized it appropriately so it meets all those future traffic demands. So there's two big improvements as far as mainline 405 traffic. The first one is we'll have a new lane on the inside in each direction. So there's new capacity. This will be part of the express toll lane system, and we'll have trips moving out of the general purpose lanes into the express toll lanes. So that's going to improve operations. The second piece is going southbound up the Kennedale Hill from 44th to 30th. We'll have a new climbing lane. So the 44th on-ramp will have a lane that continues up to the 30th off-ramp. So we'll have some additional capacity for the uphill moving vehicles. In the southbound direction, we will have 5 lanes going up the hill. And in the northbound direction, we'll have 4 lanes going down the hill.
I am Brian Elrod. I'm the I-405 team CSS, or Aesthetics and Landscape lead. So CSS is a process that we go through to really elicit the community's input as it relates to big transportation projects. And so in this case on 405, we went through an 18-month process to really elicit that input, gather the community values, what do they value, and then how do we integrate that into the overall corridor as it relates to aesthetics and landscape that provide a consistent theme throughout. So for a corridor-wide perspective, we use a lot of native plant materials. We use a lot of smaller materials initially because we have found that, and it's been proven that those smaller materials establish better for the long term and the sustainability of those. But they're primarily native. So it's a mix of evergreen, deciduous type trees, and shrubs and ground covers, so that we are very water efficient and we don't have to put a lot of irrigation water on those. After they get initially established the first year or two. But we've also identified a plant palette for the community interchanges. And these were all developed with each participant of the community advisory group at the time. And we had one for each community along the corridor. But those really provide opportunities for more ornamental type of planting, for instance, or street trees that are reflective of the surrounding community. And again, that's a mix of evergreen and deciduous type vegetation. So this particular design allows for more planting areas. Our previous concept was more of a hardscape approach because we were over structures, and we typically don't use planting on bridge structures. So having this go underneath I-405, it allows us to plant more materials primarily in the roundabout areas and in some of the medians leading up to that. We do have decorative lighting that's identified in our urban design criteria, and it's a pole light. It's consistent from one end of the corridor to the other, but that is primarily along the sidewalk areas underneath the bridges, and then as it extends out beyond the bridge into the community. The other way that we do that is we have kind of recessed box lighting underneath the girders that provides adequate lighting sources. We will have some natural light in there, and then as we typically know, the sun angles change throughout the year, so that angle of light coming underneath the bridge will vary a little bit, but that's where we supplement with the lighting to accommodate for that. So our lighting designers, they do their calculations, and they have criteria that they have to meet in terms of the number of foot candles that light is measured from, to look at where those dark spaces are. And then that's where we use some of the supplemental lighting to kind of fill in that from a safety perspective, not only from the roadway as a driver through there, but also from a pedestrian or bicyclist as well.
So what does this mean overall with this new design? Certainly there's two different ways to look at it. One is, what are the impacts both for the construction, but what are the long-term impacts? So if we just look at how does this design really affect things overall, what we find is that for freeway operations, there's really not much change at all. For the local road, there's really not much change at all. We still have the same roundabouts, we still have the same traffic in the area, but what it does make a really significant difference for is the new design allows for much flatter grades for pedestrians and bicyclists. Also those with ADA access concerns. This flatter grade provides better access to and from parking, to the transit BRT stations, and throughout the interchange area with less grades. We also saw on a permanent basis there was really minimal change in noise, some pluses, some minuses, nothing very significant in way of change either way. We also saw that there's very minimal change in overall maintenance responsibilities. But what we saw on the short term, the construction for the next 5 years, and maybe 5 years isn't really that short term, but for the next 5 years, what we're really seeing is a lot fewer impacts to traffic during the construction of this project. So we've got fewer overall roadway closures, fewer detours, fewer traffic shifts. We estimated about 30% reduction in those overall closures. Contractor has actually estimated a much higher number than that. So overall, we are going to be seeing a lot of benefits. And when you consider the challenges that we have out there just on an everyday basis because of congestion, that is a pretty big deal.